The day Emily Carter stood at the altar, dressed in white and glowing with fake happiness, I sat quietly among the guests, hands clenched, heart still, because I already knew she had been reborn. But so had I. The difference was, I didn't come back to beg for love or repeat old mistakes. I came back for revenge. I came back to win. The church looked exactly as it had in my last life, holy, polished, flooded with light and her favorite classical music echoing off the cathedral walls. Everything was designed to make her feel like a princess. And standing across from her, grinning like he'd won the world, was Ryan Kimmy, father's illegitimate son and the man who ruined both our lives. Emily used to say Ryan made her feel free, like a bowl of hot white porridge on a winter morning. She fell for him in high school, skipped class with him, got pregnant by him, and let him talk her into an abortion that cost her the ability to ever have children. She broke off our engagement for him, gave up her family's fortune for him, and later stabbed me in the back by handing him my research, which led to the collapse of my company and the death of my mother. And if that wasn't enough, she pushed me off an 18th floor rooftop with tears in her eyes, pretending to apologize while sealing my fate. She said, "If there's a next life, I won't do it again." Yeah. Well, congratulations, Emily, we're in that next life now, and I'm not the man you remember. I left the church without a word and drove straight to the hospital. My mother was still alive in this timeline, lying there with tubes in her arms and warmth barely hanging on in her fingers. I sat by her bed and held her hand like I couldn't in my last life. "What's wrong, Jamie?" she asked weakly, her voice like paper. "Weren't you at the wedding?" I smiled and shook my head. "It's nothing. I came back because I missed you." She looked at me with sadness that only mothers have. "Some things aren't meant to be forced," she said softly. "Emily isn't right for you. You need someone who can stand beside you, not a child who runs away." I nodded. "I know, Mom. I've let her go. And this time, I meant it. I hired 10 bodyguards on rotating shifts to guard my mother's room, made sure not even a fly could sneak past without my say-so. Then I returned to my company Universal Technologies and climbed straight to the top floor, my private research lab. In my past life, it took me years to develop the intelligent brain chip cutting-edge biotech that could make humans think and operate like computers. Ryan stole that from me, released it too early without a firewall, and it ended in disaster, brain data leaks, public outrage, even deaths. He never knew the last piece of the firewall hadn't been completed. I'd held back the release intentionally to keep people safe. This time, I didn't need years, I had my past life memories. I coded the missing link in under 2 hours. When I showed it to my team, they looked at me like I'd grown wings. "Mr. Walker," one of them gasped, "you're a genius." I just smiled. I wasn't a genius. I was a man with a second chance. That night, the team insisted on celebrating at a luxury rooftop restaurant. I wasn't in the mood, but I went. While stepping out onto the balcony for some air, I heard her voice, Emily. Loud, fake, familiar. She was inside with her gaggle of girlfriends, laughing like she hadn't betrayed me and killed me in a past life. "In this life, I'll only marry James Walker," she said with the conviction of a lunatic. One friend suggested seducing me. Another said I'd been obsessed with her for years and would cave. A third even joked about forcing herself on me. I was ready to walk away when I heard, "James, brother James," her voice turned soft, fake sweet. She threw herself into my arms like nothing ever happened. "Are you mad at me?" "Don't be. I canceled the wedding. I'll only marry you now." I shoved her off and said coldly, "You're Ryan's wife." Her eyes sparkled. "Are you jealous?" "It's okay to be jealous. I love you." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Why would I marry a divorced woman like you?" That shut her up. She stammered, speechless. Right then, Ryan Kim and her stepsister Zoe barged in. "Emily, we just got married and you're already with another man?" Zoe shouted. Ryan grabbed her arm and snapped, "She's my wife, James. Your sister-in-law." I looked at them with disgust. Then keep her in check. And don't call her my sister-in-law. Neither of you deserve that title. I left. As I reached the door, I heard a chuckle. I turned and saw her, the woman in the red dress from before, and beside her, the girl in white who had caught my eye days ago. Lillian Rose. Cold, beautiful, and unreadable. Her face looked like it had been handpicked by the gods. I pushed the door open and walked inside, but something about her stuck in my mind. The next day, I visited Richard Rose, Lillian's father, founder of Lu Technologies and the only man in the country with the missing firewall key I needed. And when the door opened, I nearly froze. Lillian. No makeup. Still flawless. She wore a simple house dress and led me inside with the elegance of someone who didn't care if I stared. Mr. Rose greeted me warmly, practicing calligraphy like a peaceful sage. I handed him a gift box, a necklace I'd spent a fortune on at auction. I heard you have a beloved daughter, I said politely. I hope she likes it. He chuckled and handed the box to Lillian. This is my daughter, Lillian Rose. Lillian, this is James Walker, CEO of Universal. You two should talk. She led me to a private room, shut the door, turned to face me, and said in the coldest voice imaginable, "Marry me. Have my child. I'll invest in Universal and give you the copyright." I blinked. What? She didn't look at me. Her ears turned pink. You heard me. That's how Lillian became my fiancée. Just like that. A business deal at first. The news of my engagement to Lillian Rose spread like wildfire, and for the first time in both lifetimes, I wasn't ashamed of what people were saying. Everyone thought it was a merger of interests, tech royalty aligning for mutual benefit, but I knew there was something more. Maybe it was the way her fingers trembled slightly when she handed me tea, or how her voice always stayed calm, even when I could see her ears flush pink. She was composed, calculating, but not cold, not to me. And maybe I didn't want to admit it then, but I was drawn to her. Meanwhile, Emily Carter showed up outside my company building almost every day like she owned the place. The front desk girls hated her, the security guards rolled their eyes every time she appeared, but she stood there with her lunchbox and fake college girl outfit like none of them mattered. Do you know who I am? She snapped at a guard once. I'm your boss's fiancée. How dare you stop me? James is coming to pick me up in person. I stepped out of the elevator just in time to hear that mess. She saw me and immediately put on her sweetest voice. There he is. Boda came for me. She grabbed my arm like we were still close. I yanked it free without hesitation. If someone keeps causing trouble at the door, just call the cops, I told the security guard. Don't waste time. I walked past her without sparing a glance, like she was nothing but background noise. She bit her lip, tears welling up in her eyes. You really don't love me anymore? But you used to. I turned back and smirked. I was blind. 4 words. That's all it took to shut her up. I didn't owe her closure. I didn't owe her anything. Not after she stole my research, ruined my company, killed my mother, and pushed me off a building. People like her never change, not in one life or the next. But this time, I wasn't playing the martyr. I was playing to win. And Ryan Kim? He was still running G Group like a power-drunk frat boy who thought charisma could replace actual talent. What he didn't know was that the final key to the intelligent brain chip, the firewall code, was locked behind a copyright owned not by his team, but by Lillian. That's why I showed up at Lu Technologies. And that's why I brought her that necklace worth hundreds of millions. I needed that key to bring my company back to life. But what I didn't expect was her deal: marriage, a child, an investment in exchange for the code. On paper, it was perfect. I needed what she had, and she needed an escape from her father's expectations before he passed away. Mr. Rose had liver cancer. He didn't have much time left, and all he wanted was to see his daughter get married and have a child before he died. Lillian? She didn't care about love. She cared about legacy. So we agreed. A marriage built on convenience and contracts. But as we started working together, sharing labs, testing tech, standing side by side in front of press conferences, I started noticing the small things. How she always asked the right questions in meetings. How she never backed down from critics. How she stood beside me like she was born for this world. She was brilliant, elegant, and unlike anyone I'd ever known. And I realized I didn't want to treat this marriage as just a transaction. I started giving her more than what we agreed. Instead of 3% shares, I gave her 6%. And I didn't even hesitate. The media began calling us the power couple of the century, but Emily wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I saw her again at the hospital, of all places. She was outside my mom's ward, crouched in that same pitiful white dress, eyes red and swollen from crying. "James," she whispered when she saw me. "Are you really going to marry someone else?" I didn't stop walking. "Who is she?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I've never even heard of this Lillian person." I stopped and turned. "Be careful how you speak about her. She'll be a major shareholder and chief researcher at Universal soon. She doesn't need you to know her name." Emily screamed, "You're giving her shares. You never gave me anything." I walked into my mom's ward without responding. The bodyguard kept her out. My phone buzzed. It was Lillian. "I'm nearby," she said. "Can I visit your mother?" I smiled. "I'll come get you." When I met her at the entrance, she was dressed professionally, holding 2 boxes of fruit. Her expression was calm, almost indifferent, but I noticed her hands were trembling again. She'd never admit it, but she was nervous. Nervous about meeting my mom. That meant something. We walked in silence, side by side, until Emily showed up again, screaming like a woman unhinged. "It's her, isn't it? You're doing this to make me mad. You didn't marry her in your past life, have you been reborn too? James, I love you." I was about to walk past her, but Lillian tilted her head and murmured, "Isn't this the inpatient wing? Not the psych ward?" I chuckled. Strange, right? Emily lunged, and I instinctively stepped in front of Lillian, shielding her. "Don't cause a scene," I warned her. "You'll scare my fiancé." Emily's face crumpled. Am I not prettier than her? We've known each other for 20 years. You used to love me. My jaw clenched. Watch your mouth. Call her that again, and I won't let it slide. Lillian peeked out from behind me, eyebrows raised. Didn't I see her at that restaurant? I thought she was married. I almost laughed. She wasn't even trying to insult Emily, just genuinely confused. I took her hand and led her away. She didn't ask questions. She just followed. And for some reason, that made me want to pull her closer. In the elevator, she didn't let go of my hand. "What kind of women does your mom like?" she asked softly. "She likes what I like," I answered. "Oh." She fell quiet. When we entered the ward, my mother's face lit up. She sat upright and spoke with more energy than I'd seen in weeks. Lillian listened to her stories, added her own, and somehow made my mother laugh more than I'd heard in both lives combined. At one point, my mom opened her heirloom box and pulled out a jade bracelet inlaid with purple gold, a priceless gift passed down through generations. She handed it to Lillian. Lillian panicked. I can't take this." She looked at me, desperate. I smiled. "It's from her daughter-in-law. You're that now." She hesitated, then slipped it on. I knew she only agreed because we had a deal, but something inside me still warmed. After we left, she stopped outside the elevator. "Was Emily really your childhood sweetheart?" I nodded. "Do you still like her?" Her voice was sharp, defensive. "If you do, call off the engagement. I won't give you the code if your heart's somewhere else." I didn't respond. I just led her to the garage and opened the car door. She looked stunned. "I'll take you to dinner," I said. She got in without another word. During the drive, I finally spoke. I don't like her anymore. She glanced at me. I continued, I used to. But then she married my father's bastard son. That kind of thing kills feelings fast. Oh, she said, but this time her lips curved slightly. I added, I'm reborn. In my last life, I was betrayed, ruined, killed. This life is payback. We hit a red light. She placed her hand on mine, then quickly looked out the window. I smiled and squeezed her hand gently. She didn't pull away. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept well. The engagement party was everything the media dreamed of and everything I never thought I'd care about, until I saw Lillian Rose walk in wearing the white couture dress I picked out for her. It wasn't just elegancy, it was war armor laced in silk. The fabric hugged her frame, the minimalist design contrasted with the sharp lines of her face, and when she looked at me with those clear, unshaken eyes, something inside me went still. I'd seen power, I'd seen grace, but she made both look effortless. You look good, I said casually, but she just blinked and tried to walk past me like she didn't hear. I wrapped my arm around her waist to block her path, half teasing, half because I wasn't ready to let go. Her head tilted up, her expression unreadable, but those long lashes blinked again once, slowly, and I felt my control waver. Then, as if fate hated me, the door burst open and in walked a hurricane in designer heels, the woman in the red dress from the restaurant, now wearing a Chanel two-piece with enough attitude to light a fire. Oops, she gasped dramatically, sorry to interrupt your makeout session, I'll get a sty if I look any longer. I rolled my eyes and stepped away, but Lillian's cheeks had already turned pink. She glared at me like I'd embarrassed her, but didn't say a word. We left the lounge and headed to the banquet hall. I was about to sign the official share transfer document 6% of Universal Technologies when I paused. Originally, I promised her 3%. This was double. I was crossing the line between business and something else, and I knew it. But I still pushed the paper toward her and said, sign it. You're on this ship with me now. I won't treat you unfairly. Her eyes fluttered, and for a second, she looked like she wanted to say something but she just signed. The press began to arrive, cameras flashing, everyone hungry for a headline. The tech alliance of the century, someone whispered behind me. I didn't care. I had one eye on the main entrance. I knew Emily would come, and she didn't disappoint. She walked in disguised as a waitress, carrying a tray, and made a beeline for us. When she passed by, she accidentally spilled red wine all over Lillian's white dress. The liquid bloomed across the fabric like a gunshot wound. Lillian froze. The hall fell silent. Emily dropped to her knees with a fake gasp and began scrubbing at the stain with a dirty rag like she was the victim. Oh no, I'm so sorry, she said, but when she looked up at me, there was satisfaction behind those crocodile tears. Lillian's face turned cold. She stood up straight and called for the lobby manager, her voice calm but sharp enough to slice through steel. Before the drama could spiral further, my assistant rushed to me and whispered in my ear, G Group launched the Intelligent Brain this morning, it's live. I clenched my jaw. So Ryan had pulled the trigger early again, just like in the last life. But he was dumber this time. His version didn't have the completed firewall. I knew what was coming. I turned back to Emily, who was now pretending to cry. I removed my suit jacket and wrapped it around Lillian's waist to cover the stain. Go change. There are 2 backup gowns in the lounge. Pick whichever one you like, I whispered. She didn't argue. She nodded once, gave Emily one last look of disdain, and left with her friend. The room resumed its noise as if nothing had happened. I leaned toward Emily and said under my breath, you disgust me. You tried to ruin her dress. You think that'll stop me from marrying her? Emily wiped her fake tears and hissed, you're reborn, right? You remember everything. Then you know I didn't mean to kill you, it just happened. Besides, your company's going down again soon, just like last time. I laughed. You knew I was reborn, and you still thought I'd be dumb enough to keep my data in the same place? Her eyes widened. You're pathetic, I added. You were given a second chance and still chose to crawl back to the man who betrayed you. You thought Ryan would protect you after you confessed to me at his wedding? He hates you now. You humiliated him in public and made him a laughingstock. You really think that ends well? I didn't wait for her reply. I turned and walked to the lounge. Lillian had changed into a deep emerald green gown that made her look like a goddess carved from ice. The color made her skin glow and framed her waist like it was sculpted. When she stepped out, even the photographers gasped. Miss Rose is stunning. President Walker's a lucky man. I smiled and whispered to her, they launched the brain without the firewall. Our turn now. She arched a brow, calm as ever. Hope you don't regret this marriage when you're broke. Too late, I said, smirking. I already dope 'cause I didn't marry you sooner. She rolled her eyes. You're ridiculous. You're beautiful, I replied, and that made her pause. During the press conference, I stood beside her, our fingers laced, engagement rings catching the light. We introduced the world to the real intelligent brain backed by Universal and secured by Lu-Tech's firewall. The response was immediate. The press lost their minds. Investors called non-stop. Social media exploded. Then, right in the middle of it, Lillian reached into her portfolio and pulled out another document. This is my sincerity, she said, handing me a transfer of 4% of Lu Technologies. My heart stopped. You're giving me this? I asked. Didn't you say we were on a pirate ship? Consider this my boarding pass. I chuckled, leaned down, and kissed her cheek. Her ears turned crimson. I accept your sincerity, my dear fiancé, I whispered. The next morning, G Group was buried in scandal. Their brain chip caused headaches, data leaks, and system crashes. Lawsuits flooded in. People called it dangerous. Meanwhile, we released a lawyer's letter online. We exposed that Emily Carter, using her long-time friendship with me, infiltrated our company and stole internal data. The letter was accompanied by security footage of her entering restricted areas. Another video surfaced Emily crying and confessing her love to me at Ryan's wedding, humiliating him in front of high society. People went wild. Gossip forums lit up like fireworks. Hashtags trended worldwide. G Group collapse, Emily exposed, power couple rises. And that was before I published the essay written in my mother's name detailing how my father, William Walker, a Phoenix man, married into wealth, used my mother's dowry to build G Group, cheated on her, then kicked us out for his mistress and illegitimate son. The public turned fast. Stocks plunged. Investors pulled out. Ryan Kim and Emily Carter became social media punchlines overnight. I got a text from Grandpa Walker, your mother would be proud. Good work, son. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. For once, I was winning. And I had Lillian by my side, looking like a queen and fighting like one too. The day before our wedding, I got a call from a number I hadn't saved, but I recognized the voice the second I picked up. Emily Carter, desperate, hoarse, and crying, the kind of cry that doesn't expect sympathy anymore. James, she whispered, I know you're getting married tomorrow. Please, for my grandmother's sake, just meet me once. I won't beg again. I closed my eyes for a second. Her grandmother was the only person who ever showed me kindness when I was a kid, back when my father pretended I didn't exist and my mother was too sick to get out of bed. That old woman fed me, sheltered me, treated me like her own grandson when I was just the invisible boy next door. I couldn't ignore that. So I told Lillian I had a meeting and drove to the rooftop, the same rooftop where Emily pushed me off in my past life. The irony wasn't lost on me. She and Ryan Kim were already there, crouched in the corner like two washed-up ghosts clinging to the edge of a world that had forgotten them. Ryan looked like Hellbeard, overgrown, clothes wrinkled, eyes twitching like he hadn't slept in days. Emily looked worse. Her hair was tangled, her cheeks sunken, and the white dress she wore looked like a knockoff she probably dug out of a second-hand bin. She saw me and laughed a brittle, broken sound laced with tears. You're still the same. Still so stupidly soft-hearted. I didn't respond. I just watched her, trying to remember how I ever loved someone who could kill me with a smile. If you had chosen me, we wouldn't be here, she continued, stepping toward me. But no, you chose that ice-cold tech princess. And now look at me. I looked at her, really looked, and said, I don't regret it. If I had another chance to go back, I still wouldn't choose you. Ryan barked a laugh, hollow and bitter, and pushed forward, grabbing my collar. You think you're better than me? You think you deserve everything just because you had a rich grandfather? If I had what you had, I'd be 10 times more successful. I shrugged him off with a snort. Really? Is that why you had to steal my research and seduce a rich girl just to keep G Group from collapsing? Is that why you needed Emily to trap me here with a fake apology and another rooftop performance? I stepped back just as they both lunged, but they didn't make it far. The police I called 20 minutes earlier burst through the rooftop door, pinning both of them to the ground like the trash they were. Emily screamed, he set us up, and I just stared down at her with the same indifference she once looked at me with as I fell to my death. You were reborn and still made the same choices, I said quietly. You never deserved a second chance. Suddenly, a blur rushed past the officers and threw herself into my arms. Lillian. She must have tracked my location with the smart brain system and realized something was off. Her hands were shaking, her eyes red as she smacked my chest. Are you insane? You're getting married tomorrow and you come here alone like you're some tragic hero? Are you trying to make me a widow before I even change my last name? I pulled her in and wrapped my arms around her tightly. I'm sorry, I whispered into her hair. No more secrets. I promise. The next morning, we didn't invite a stadium of guests. Just family, friends, and those who truly mattered. My mother cried quietly when Lillian walked down the aisle, dressed in a gown so ethereal she looked like something sculpted by angels. Mr. Rose looked proud, fragile, but content as he placed her hand in mine. Take care of her, he said. Every day, I promised. Our vows weren't long, but they were real. When I said, I do, I meant every word. When she looked me in the eyes and said the same, I felt like I'd finally rewritten my ending. I kissed her like the world could fall away right then and I'd still be okay. Lillian and I spent the next few days on a private beach, far away from corporate battles and betrayals. She lay in my arms, sun glowing on her skin, cheeks warm, her lips red from the sun and maybe a little from my kisses. James, she said, narrowing her eyes, we agreed this was a contract marriage. I grinned. My dad said his liver was fine, by the way. She froze. I raised an eyebrow. You lied to me. She scoffed. Like you didn't lie first. You manipulated me into marrying you with those sweet eyes and tragic backstory. I laughed. Your best friend told me you fell for me at first sight. Is that true? She turned red and swatted my shoulder. Shut up. I leaned in and kissed her again. The ocean waves clapped behind us, but I only heard her breath catch. The tech world never stopped buzzing. Our launch was being hailed as the cleanest, safest, and most revolutionary innovation in human-machine integration. Pre-orders had sold out within minutes, and both Universal and Loot Technologies were now leading the future of bio-AI. Investors called non-stop. Universities begged to license our research. Meanwhile, Ryan and Emily's scandal was still burning hot. Videos from their arrest, the leaked wedding day confession, the footage of Emily crying while stealing documents, everything had become digital fuel for public mockery. G Group's shares dropped so low they had to freeze trading. Emily tried to issue a public apology, but no one cared. The damage was done. And for once, I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. She got exactly what she deserved. But just when I thought things were finally settling, Lillian showed up one evening in the living room, holding a black folder. James, she said, voice neutral but firm. I want to transfer 4% of Loot Technologies to you. Not for marriage. For partnership. I stood up. Why? She looked me in the eye. Because I want us to win together. I walked over, closed the folder, and kissed her forehead. We already are. I used to think falling in love happened like lightning suddenly, with no warning, burning fast and dying out even faster, but with Lillian, it was something quieter, like realizing you'd been breathing the same air as someone your entire life and only just now noticed it kept you alive, and somewhere between pretending to be engaged and sharing a king-sized bed during our honeymoon, something shifted that neither of us dared to name but both of us felt every time our hands brushed in passing or when she leaned into me on instinct while watching the waves crash beyond our villa's glass windows. And I knew it wasn't just about the marriage agreement anymore when she woke me up one night, whispering half asleep about an old dream of hers where she'd build something no man could take credit for, and I just laid there, listening to her breathing steady out, thinking how ironic it was that in trying to avoid love, we'd walked right into it, and she didn't even realize she'd started stealing pieces of me until there was nothing left untouched, not even the way I smiled at her when she asked me questions about my mother or brought me coffee in the exact way I liked it without me ever asking. And it wasn't even about grand gestures, it was in the way she silently waited for me to lock the car doors before walking into a crowded room, or how she always stood on my left side, letting me keep my dominant hand free, the kind of attention to detail that no one ever gave me before, not even Emily, who used to claim she knew me better than I knew myself, but in truth only knew the parts of me that served her convenience, while Lillian saw the mess and didn't flinch, didn't try to fix it, just quietly placed her presence next to mine like she wasn't afraid of the broken glass. And I knew I was gone for her when I watched her walk barefoot across our hotel suite to pick up my dropped phone and set it back down with care like it mattered because it belonged to me, and God, it was stupid how such a small thing could make my heart ache like that. So one night while we were out having dinner on a quiet rooftop overlooking the ocean, I asked her, half joking and half hoping, what would you do if I said I didn't want this to be a temporary marriage anymore? And she didn't answer right away, just looked out at the water for a long time, then finally said in a voice so calm it scared me, then don't say it unless you mean it. And for once, I didn't have something sarcastic to toss back, so I just reached across the table, laced my fingers through hers, and said, I do mean it. And maybe she thought I was bluffing because she laughed softly like she didn't believe me, but she didn't pull her hand away either, and from that moment on, something about the way we looked at each other changed. And it wasn't about pretending anymore when we hosted meetings with investors or went to product expos hand in hand, because now, when I called her my wife in public, I meant it. In private too, and when I introduced her to global tech leaders as the co-owner of Universal's next-gen platform, I saw the way her eyes lit up with pride, not for herself, but because I said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, because to me, it was, and even when she teased me about my snoring or the way I hoarded socks in the laundry basket, I let her. Because being with her felt like being seen for the first time without needing to perform or chase approval like I did with Emily for half my life, and the more time passed, the more I realized I didn't care about revenge as much as I cared about making sure this life, this second chance, wasn't wasted on pain or bitterness, and Lillian gave me a reason to move forward without looking back, though the universe wasn't done testing me yet, because one afternoon, as I was preparing a keynote for an international conference, I got a notification through the smart brain system that someone was trying to breach our beta firewall, and my blood ran cold when I saw the coordinates. It was the exact apartment where Ryan Kim's mother used to live, which meant either Ryan or someone desperate enough to still help him was trying to use old backdoors to exploit our network, and it made no sense because G Group was already beyond saving, but that's when I remembered how people like Ryan didn't need reasons, they just needed a shred of hope, a crack in the wall, and suddenly I knew this wasn't about stealing tech anymore. This was personal, this was about ego, legacy, and the twisted obsession of a man who couldn't accept losing to the bastard son of a woman he resented his whole life, so I called our head of cybersecurity and told them to reroute all pings to a decoy server, let them think they were winning, and then freeze the location feed, because I was going there myself, not as James Walker the CEO, but as the man who'd once been pushed off a building and left for dead, and when I pulled up outside the run down complex that night, I wasn't surprised to find the lights off and the door cracked open, like they wanted me to step inside, and I did, carefully, every muscle tense, until I saw Ryan sitting alone in the kitchen, staring at a half-eaten bowl of instant noodles, his beard now trimmed, but his eyes empty like a man who knew the story was over but still kept reading the last page hoping it would change. And he looked up at me with a tired smile and said, "Congratulations, James." You really won this time, and I should have felt satisfaction, but all I felt was the weight of wasted talent, ruined families, and the sick irony of watching someone who spent his life stealing finally realize there was nothing left to take, and when I turned to leave, he said, "She still talks about you, you know. Emily," and I stopped at the door without turning around. "She should stop," I said, "because I already have," and then I left, not because I was afraid, but because there was nothing left for me in that Placino revenge worth chasing, no closure worth forcing, just shadows of people I'd already buried in another lifetime. And when I got home, Lillian was asleep on the couch, curled under one of my old sweatshirts, face relaxed in a way she never showed anyone but me, and I walked over, brushed her hair back, and kissed her forehead, whispering, "You're the only one I want to remember when this all ends," because in a world that kept dragging me back into old wounds and burnt bridges, she was the only future that made me feel like I hadn't wasted my second chance. The night before our one-year wedding anniversary, I stood on the balcony of our new home with a glass of wine in hand, watching the city lights flicker like stars that had dropped too close to the ground, and I thought about how full circle everything had come, how a man like me left for dead on a rooftop in another lifetime could end up here, wrapped in warmth, respect, and a kind of love I didn't even know existed until Lillian Rose stepped into my life wearing a white dress and a poker face. And just as I was finishing that thought, she came out behind me barefoot, hair still damp from a bath, one of my old t-shirts hanging off her shoulder like she'd claimed it as her own, which she had, along with everything else that mattered, and without saying a word, she leaned against me, took my wine glass, and sipped without asking, then handed it back like it had always been hers. And I smiled because that was our thing now, no need for big declarations or grand gestures, just quiet moments. Where the world didn't get a say, but of course, the world wasn't done throwing curveballs, because the next morning I got a call from an anonymous number, and before I could hang up, the voice on the other end froze my spine. Emily, frantic and whispering like she was out of breath, telling me she and Ryan were being hunted, that the authorities were closing in, that she just needed to see me once before she disappeared for good, and I should have said no, should have hung up, but then she said, "Please, James. Do it for my grandma," and damn it, even now, I couldn't shake that part of me that owed the woman who once fed me when I had nothing, so I agreed, told Lillian I'd be out for a bit, and drove to the same rooftop where everything had started and ended, and I don't know if it was poetic or just masochistic, but when I got there, it was like déjà vu. Emily standing near the guardrail, hair messy, eyes haunted, and Ryan pacing like a caged animal whose last illusion of control had snapped, and the moment he saw me, he barked out a bitter laugh. "You really are predictable, James. Always showing up when you should walk away," and Emily looked at me, eyes glassy, her voice trembling. "Do you remember that night, when we were 17 and you waited outside my house in the rain because my mom wouldn't let me out?" And I nodded because yeah, I remembered everything, especially the part where she ran out the back door to meet Ryan while I froze alone on the porch. And she wiped her tears like that memory hurt her more than it did me, like regret was enough to fix anything, but it wasn't, not now, not ever, and when she stepped closer, I backed away because I saw it again, that same flicker in her eyes she had the night she pushed me off the roof, and I realized too late this wasn't just about guilt, this was her trying to rewrite the ending again. And Ryan moved toward me, anger boiling over, ranting about how the world owed him something, how he should have been the rightful heir, how my mother stole everything from his, and all I could do was look him dead in the eye and say, "If I'm so beneath you, why is it that your entire life revolves around beating me?" And that must have broken something in him because he lunged, tried to shove me toward the edge, and for a second it felt just like before, the wind, the height, the betrayal, but this time I was ready, and just as I twisted out of his grip, sirens howled from the streets below, and armed officers stormed the rooftop, pinning them both to the ground before either could react, and I stood there panting, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of finally closing the last door of my past, and just as the cops led them away, Emily turned back one last time and asked, "If we were both given another life, would you choose me again?" And I answered without hesitation, "I already did once. Never again," and I walked away, not just from the rooftop, but from every piece of myself that still lived in that old version of who I used to be, because when I reached the parking lot, Lillian was already there, arms crossed, trying to look annoyed, but her eyes were puffy and I could tell she'd been crying, and the second I stepped toward her, she smacked my shoulder and hissed, "Are you an idiot? We're supposed to be getting ready for our anniversary dinner and you're out here playing rooftop games again? Do you want me to walk down that aisle tomorrow alone?" And I pulled her into my arms and buried my face in her hair and whispered, I'm sorry, baby. I swear, no more ghosts. No more risks. From now on, it's just us," and she mumbled something about punching me later, but her arms tightened around me like she didn't want to let go, and that night, we didn't dress up or go out to a five-star restaurant. We stayed home, danced in the living room to some old jazz she liked, and ate takeout straight from the boxes while our wedding photos scrolled across the TV screen. And somewhere between her laughing at my 7th grade haircut and me feeding her dumplings, I realized this was Ithis. Was what peace looked like, what love felt like when it wasn't laced with sacrifice or survival, and a week later, when the smart brain chip reached 100 million active users and both Universal and Lu technologies became the gold standard for safe biotech integration, we stood on a TEDx stage together, hand in hand, presenting not just the future of cognitive evolution but the story of how we got there. And I watched her speak to the audience with clarity, with grace, with power, and I knew that while I may have built the foundation, she was the one who gave it life, and when we finally walked off stage, she turned to me and said, "I'm proud of you," and I replied, "No, I'm proud of us," and that night, while the world called us innovators and the press labeled us the smartest couple alive, we sat on our balcony again, this time in silence, watching the stars above the city, and she leaned on my shoulder and whispered, "Do you ever miss the old life?" And I took her hand and placed it over my chest and said, "Only the parts where you were missing," and she smiled, soft and slow, like that was all she needed to hear, and as the breeze carried the scent of jasmine through the air and the city pulsed with the quiet hum of distant traffic, I looked at her, my wife, my partner, my beginning and end, and thought to myself that in the end, maybe being reborn wasn't about revenge or redemption, it was about finally choosing the right person and never letting go.